His ambassador, Muhammad Sirus Sajjad Ghazi, is a career diplomat, that means a diplomat from the origin. And he joined the foreign service in Pakistan in 1990. Was the ambassador of Pakistan to Hungary before, concurrently accredited to Montenegro, also served as joint secretary in the Prime Minister's office in Pakistan, and had been to Genoa, New Delhi, and Washington as part of diplomatic services other than Foreign Ministry of Pakistan as section leader and director, and holds MBBS degree from Alloma Iqbal Medical College, speaks English, Urdu, Punjabi languages. Thank you for your attendance and your participation, sir. Today we witness a great change in the global stage, a transformation. We had bipolarity, later than we have polarity, and some countries portrayed the United States as hyperpower. So, well, it was unipolarity. And now we are witnessing multipolarity. That means we have different regions as a system running in itself. And Pakistan represents a country that is a regional power at the South Asia and dealing with many security affiliated problems, different dynamics to be countered. And in the meantime, is direct engagement with different actors, either in the region or in the globe. So it's an opportunity for us, first, to understand Pakistan. Second, understand the design of international politics. And finally, I have another purpose in this meeting. It's to see an ambassador and introduce how an ambassador perceives the globe. It's another issue. So I would like to first pass word to you before asking a question, because you may address the students first.
Thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity, Professor Aslan. It's a pleasure. I have been in Turkey for now almost 4 years. Now, in fact, a little over 4 years. I have had the opportunity to visit a number of Turkish universities. I have found interacting with the students, both Turkish and international in those universities, an extremely rewarding as well as enlightening and informative experience. I will not presume to be able to contribute to the knowledge or information of your students and the audience, but just to have an exchange of views, learn from you and give my perspective, and perhaps we will both come out of the experience somewhat richer. With your permission, if you allow me now, I'll try to speak for about 20-25 minutes, and then we can start our question answer session. And with that, may I just start now?
Sure, please, because I want to direct two significant questions, and if you include both, I would appreciate it, because we have to link the agenda with your speech.
Absolutely.
The first one is about, we have to promote our knowledge base with your experience. And your experience, is something really important in understanding the dynamics of international politics. So the first one is actually, how do you take Pakistan in terms of regional and global developments? That's the first issue we want to, learn. And the second question, how do you see the overall transformation in the globe? Because it's something beyond Pakistan, though. Pakistan is being influenced, diffused, or affected from this structural change. And the nature of this change and the nature of this structure is really important. So how can you combine both? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. These are very relevant and pertinent questions. If you allow me, I will reverse the response, reverse the order of the questions. I will first try to address the transformations that you see, you said that the world is undergoing, and share my little perspective on it. Then I will place Pakistan in the discussion and to give you Pakistan's perspective, and then we can take questions and answers from your students, questions from your students. So when you look at the world right now, what do you see? every professor of international relations for almost the last 100 years has probably been saying that we are living in an age of transformation and we are living in an age of change, and that the world around us is expanding as well as shrinking, developing as well as in some respects going back, becoming more complicated, becoming more interrelated, becoming more also overlapping. But when I say this and when Professor Aslan says this, I think this particular phase that we are living through is particularly transformative. There are numerous changes that we are seeing in the world right now, and these reinforce each other. These are overlapping each other, and these impact our lives as individuals and our lives as citizens of the world and our lives as nation states. There is a political transformation underway. I do not have to say much about it in the sense that we all know that the political center of gravity is moving from the west towards the east. There is an economic transformation underway. The economic center of gravity is following the political center of gravity. The relationship between politics and economics was always there, but some countries and sometimes politics took a precedence. But now they are becoming exactly complementary. One reinforces the other. One holds back the other at the same time, conversely. There is a technological change underway at the same time. And this complicates both the political change as well as the economic change. The manner in which the information technology, the transformation and revolution has changed our lives, changed the way we live, changed the way actually the states act and interact and behave, is unprecedented. Then there is also a change in terms of, there are some negative transformations that are also underway. As we all know, the world has been governed by a certain international order that was established after the Second World War. It was based on multilateralism, liberal values, private enterprise, human rights, refugee rights, interdependence. But unfortunately, all of these values and this structure that has survived or that has reigned over the last 7 decades now seems to be under threat. Some of the architects of this order themselves are no longer bound, or at least seem no longer bound by the same values and the same motivations for which they created that structure. I just agree, and I give you an example that multilateralism is in retreat. Bilateralism, as the professor mentioned, gave way to unilateralism, and unfortunately, unilateralism in a manner in which it thwarted, it undermined the very values on which the post-war order was established. There seems to be a growing propensity towards conflict. Agreements, treaties do not seem to hold the same sanctity that was supposed to be accorded to them. There is a tendency to place narrow national self-interests over the principles of multipolarity and multilateralism. Perversely, the multilateral institutions have become instruments for advancing unilateralism. There are now veto sanctions that we could not have imagined before. Countries are being ostracized. There is a deep new trend towards disinformation. Facts are no longer sacred. They are molded. They are, unfortunately, in some instances, even crafted, created. There is an entire global community devoted to doing nothing else except to just create false and wrong information to promote narrow self-interests. We are witness to this information in the context of Kashmir in Pakistan, in Pakistan's context, the situation in Afghanistan to some extent, the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh is another example. The situation in the Eastern Mediterranean is an example of this, that how without any regard to facts, things and facts and situations are presented in a very partisan and a non-objective manner. There is also a very, very disturbing trend of going back on human rights principles. The rights of refugees was at one time, we were told, inviolable, were absolute. Now it seems that the very authors of the same agreement, the Refugee Convention, have a difficulty in upholding those same values and rights. Pakistan is host to refugees for the last 40 years, and they number between 3 and 4 million at any one time. Turkey is the largest host of refugees, but somehow the countries who have the economic means and the countries who actually drafted the Refugee Convention are now loath and are reluctant to receive the refugees and grant them those rights. We hear very disturbing stories of refugees being turned away from, desperate refugees being turned away from shores promising them safety, boats turned away and sent back to the sea. There is another very unfortunate development that has taken place in the recent time, and that is the rise in Islamophobia and xenophobia. And what is really disturbing is that there is a tacit acceptance of this development in many parts of the world. Politicians do not only politicians do not criticize it, but politicians use it subversively to gain and legitimize their political position and position and their election campaigns. I dare say that xenophobia and more importantly Islamophobia are the least criticized crimes that are happening in the world right now. Then all of this was compounded. Of course, there was this pandemic, which did a very strange thing. Of course, it was a global challenge. It hurt everybody. We all suffered, but it exposed all of these trends that I have mentioned to you. Rather than cooperating with each other, countries focused on their own narrow safety without realizing that, like poverty, disease anywhere is a threat to health everywhere. But we chose to look inwards rather than cooperate with each other. And there is also this aspect that unfortunately, all of these changes, of course, these are, and terrorism, terrorism has always been there. Again, some countries suffering on account of terrorism is called unacceptable, but some other countries who suffer from terrorism, it's okay. This double standard on so many issues is unfortunately hurting the global fight against this very, very serious threat. Pakistan and Turkey both are victims of terrorism. We have suffered a lot. Pakistan's case, we have lost over 80,000 lives in the last 2 decades. Our economic losses to terrorism go beyond $150 billion. Some of the worst terrorist atrocities that have taken place in the world, unfortunately, they have happened in Pakistan. Perhaps you remember that slaughter of our school children in Peshawar some 5-6 years ago. And yet, while Pakistan is losing all of these citizens to terrorism, Pakistan is also said to be falling short in fighting the terrorism. It's a paradox. Above all, in all of this, these are very serious challenges that we are looking, but there is a bigger challenge threatening all of us, and we seem to be forgetting about it, and that is climate change. Oil was the strategic liquid of the 20th century. Water is the strategic liquid of the 21st century. And if we do not cooperate with each other on climate change, the kind of challenges we are confronting now are going to look very insignificant compared to the kind of challenges when mass movements of people will be prompted because of lack of food, lack of nourishment, lack of employment, serious employment challenges, serious climate challenges that will confront all of us. My intention is not to frighten you, Professor, or your students, but I thought that I should give you a somewhat candid picture of the world we are living in. We can have a discussion, longer discussion on it. So where does Pakistan stand in this this world undergoing these transformations, unfortunately transformations that seem to be on balance more negative than positive. And well, Pakistan's position stems from this, that it is possible to change these transformations from the negative to the positive. And Pakistan, as a nation state in its own individual right and with like-minded countries, is prepared to assist in ensuring that we take these changes and make the best of them for ourselves, for our friends, and for our regional partners, and for our international partners. So what does Pakistan believe? We believe in a rule-based international global order, which is just and fair. We call for strengthening multilateralism and collective security. We maintain a principled stance that we will not be part of any regional conflict. Pakistan views its region through more of a geo-economic than a geostrategic or a geopolitical lens. We are invested in promoting regional connectivity. It is good for us. It is good for the region. Pakistan and wants durable peace and prosperity in our region that hinges on internal stability. I will just take a few minutes to speak on some specific issues that are of importance to Pakistan. There is on our east, the unresolved issue of Jammu and Kashmir and our relationship with India. We seek nothing more than a proper normal relationship with India based on the Charter of the United Nations principle of sovereign equality of states and self-determination. We have tried to work on that. Unfortunately, the current political climate in India is not conducive to such a relationship. The situation in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is no surprise, is well known. The situation is bad. We call for the lifting of the status of siege that is under which the Kashmiris are existing. Physical siege, 900,000 military occupation troops. Information siege in the sense that internet is frequently down, access to the world is frequently limited. The siege of human rights, in which arbitrary detention or all manner of human rights violations are taking place. We are prepared to have a mature, meaningful discussion based on the United Nations Security Council resolutions, and we look forward to that happening. But unfortunately, right now, it does not seem possible. On Afghanistan, this is the issue or the crisis du jour. In fact, it's a long-term issue, not du jour. Pakistan has always said that there was no military solution to the situation in Afghanistan. We have been proven correct. If a coalition of 30 plus countries with $3 or at least $2 trillion at its disposal and 20 years to get its plan working, with all the levers of the state at its disposal, they could not manage to do that, then it is proof enough that our approach, and when I say our, I mean the international community's approach to Afghanistan was probably not correct, and there was no solution that could be imposed militarily. That, having said that, it would be in the benefit of Afghans and the ruling dispensation to have an inclusive setup in which the rights of all Afghans citizens are protected and which all Afghans have a stake. This is the message we have been consistently conveying to the new dispensation in Afghanistan. We also convey to them that Afghan soil should not be a source of trouble or terrorism in any part of the world and in the region. This is a position that, of course, the rest of the international community also shares. Right now, Afghanistan is facing and I am emphasizing Afghanistan. Our sympathies are properly with Afghans. So right now, Afghanistan is facing a humanitarian crisis of a very, very serious magnitude. It is the responsibility of the international community to step up and avert this disaster, because in the final analysis, what do we want? Do we want Afghanistan to collapse under its own weight, become a vacuum that attracts all manner of unsavory characters and outfits from the rest of the world to use that vacuum to threaten the region and the world? If the perception is that Afghanistan is too far away from some other shores, the fact is that right now in the world that we are living in, a source of instability anywhere will be reaching even secure shores, even oceans away. So it is a collective responsibility. We need to step up and first of all avert the humanitarian disaster looming over Afghanistan, and then find a mature way of dealing with the country so that Afghanistan is able to join us as a respected and responsible member of the international community. I have a lot more to say, but I would just say that given the shortage of time, I've already spoken about 17 minutes. I have 3 minutes more. What is the way forward then? I would say that we need to take possibly, we need to consider 5 steps. First, we need to strengthen multilateralism that promotes collective security for everyone rather than pushing a zero-sum approach. Second, we must hold those powers accountable who violate international law, United Nations Security Council resolutions, and carry out human rights violations, no matter how important or no matter how indispensable they may appear to be in the alliance system. Third, in order to promote a fair and just global order, the same yardstick and benchmark should be promoted across organizations in emerging technologies and strategic areas. Carving out exemptions should be eschewed. Fourth, sustainable development needs to be pursued with equality, mutual collaboration, burden sharing to reduce disparity. Finally, and fifth, global consultations on pressing challenges such as climate change. There's a COP meeting taking place very soon, I think tomorrow, may be pursued with a renewed agenda while casting the geopolitical competition aside. It will not be easy, but if we are to survive as a species, I saw a very nice, somebody sent me a clip on WhatsApp in which a dinosaur is addressing the United Nations General Assembly session. And the joke aside, it's a very, very appropriate message for all of us, in which he says that human species should work together to avoid the extinction that befell the dinosaurs. Of course, he was referring to climate change, but I think underlying our response to climate change are our own other narrow national self-interests. So we need to rise up to the challenge, work together, assist those who are unable to assist themselves, while at the same time ensuring that as we move forward, no one is left behind. Because if somebody is left behind, it in a way means that all of us in some way have not progressed as much as we could. I give you a small example and I conclude on this. Right now, Afghanistan, as I said, is facing a humanitarian disaster. One aspect of this disaster could be, and there are statistics as to, there's a very serious chance of malnutrition. Economic activity is going down. What are the sources of infections and pandemics? Poverty, lack of sanitation, lack of nourishment, lack of medication. Among the so many other challenges that Afghanistan poses, perhaps this is also that we need to consider that if we allow Afghanistan to sink, it may well be the nidus of the next global pandemic. And this is just one aspect. I leave you on this note. I am available to contribute whatever little I know in response to your questions, and look forward to benefiting from your information and knowledge as well. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your insightful, experience, knowledge, and speech. I believe that our students does have questions, so I'm just trying to check any of them. And we have a Pakistani lady over here, and I am sure she will ask a question. Okay, go ahead, please.
The Pakistan thing on what's going on right now, especially what's happening in Afghanistan. But the government, the system that's been propped up in Afghanistan now seems to be technically very lacking with administrative powers. So, how does the world and especially Pakistan think that it exists on that?
I do not know if you understood the question, because there is a problem with the sound, right, sir?
Yes. In fact, if you don't mind, you can repeat the question for her.
Yes. She asks, there is a type of government in Afghanistan that is more questionable in terms of efficiency, in terms of its administrative capacity. So she's asking exactly how to handle it. Is that right? How to handle the administrative capacity of Afghanistan. Actually, may I expand the question, because I have the same thing in my mind.
Yes, please.
On the one hand, we have a threat of legitimization of Taliban, even though Taliban has become a reality on the ground, and governments are hesitant in establishing links. On the other hand, somehow, governments should have a linkage with Taliban to manage the overall situation. So what should be the methodology? I mean, how can we handle it? That's the essence of the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. My response would be, and I don't want to sound like an advocate of the regime there now, but political reality is political reality. The world has had a history of dealing with other regimes that it has not found very pleasant or palatable because of enlightened self-interest. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, what is more dangerous, or on balance, what would you rather allow Afghanistan to sink under its own weight, or have some kind of an engagement with the dispensation there, in which will be a mutually educative process? The Taliban will realize the expectations that the world has of them, and hopefully modify their stance and position on various issues. And at the same time, the world also sees that this is a dialogue in a way that both sides are informing each other and addressing each other's concerns, and at the same time benefiting from each other also. Is our distaste of the regime greater than our distaste of a failed Afghanistan? On balance, I would say that no. A failed Afghanistan is to nobody's advantage. Regime, on the other hand, a regime that is probably not as mainstream as the rest of the regimes in the world, perhaps there is still a chance that it might learn and might also modify its behavior. We have to have an engagement. And again, the denominator is not the Taliban. The denominator is the Afghan people. If something is good for the people of Afghanistan, we should have no hesitation in reaching out. We do not want Afghans to starve. We do not want Afghans to be totally unemployed and be devoid of any means of economic to earn a living. We do not want Afghans to fall prey to the looming winter and the cold that is coming, as well as the lack of medicine and things. So we need to step up. Yes, there may not be recognition, though Taliban say that they have met all the conditions, legal conditions of being recognized, but there has to be some kind of an engagement, because without engagement, unfortunately, we are looking at a situation in which no one, whether Pakistan, which is an immediate neighbor, or somebody sitting in a capital 2 oceans away, none of us comes out the winner, and certainly the Afghans don't. I'm not saying that we should jettison human rights, women rights. We keep pushing on them, but our immediate concern right now is the very survival of a very large number of Afghan citizens. So this is how I see this issue.
Let me ask another question.
Yes, please.
Defense industry, sir. Because I know that there is a great interaction between Turkish and Pakistani defense industries. There were deals in the past in terms of building ships and also helicopter sales, attack helicopters. And we experienced some problems as Pakistan and Turkey because of the US, measures to prevent, engine exportation. Well, I see that there is something now further between Turkey and Pakistan to expand this relation in defense industry to produce more jointly, and in the meantime, share the technologies. So we are at what level in terms of defense know-how sharing?
Well, defense is a very important sector of our bilateral relationship. And in the last some years, it has seen exponential growth. It consists of a number of levels, if I may say. There is, of course, a very good understanding between the armed forces of both sides. There are regular exchanges at the operational level, at the command level, and at the political level. There are bilateral visits, which are regular. We have institutional mechanisms of dialoguing. The two sides, have a dialogue. The three services have their separate sub-dialogues. There is also a very healthy cooperation in terms of joint exercises in which we both seek to learn from each other. Sometimes Pakistan is visiting Turkey, and sometimes Turkish armed forces personnel are visiting Pakistan. And the foundation for this is, of course, our excellent political and historic relationship. The other thing is that Pakistan and Turkey face similar challenges in our respective regions. We are mid-sized countries. Our surface area, by the way, land area, is almost identical. We are both crossroads of history. People have been coming and going through our territory for the last thousands of years. We live in geographical in an area that serves as a geographical corridor. Turkey is a geographical knot, a K-N-O-T, geographical knot between three continents. Pakistan is a geographical knot between South Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East. We sit astride the Strait of Hormuz, which is only 100 kilometers away from our border. This geostrategic location gives us tremendous opportunities, but it also gives us gives rise to a tremendous number of challenges also, many of them security and defense related challenges. So Pakistan and Turkey understand each other's position, and they have similar defense needs also. On account of that, it is natural that the two countries should be working together. Pakistan and Turkish defense industry has made great strides in the last 2 decades or so. It has emerged as one of the world's most efficient, productive, and innovative defense production sectors in the world. 7 of the Turkish defense firms last year were in the top 100 defense firms of the world. 3 of them, I think, were in the top 50. So it is natural that Pakistan should be looking towards Turkey, given our historical relationship and the absolute trust that we have in each other. We will never be sanctioned by Turkey, and Turkey will never be sanctioned by Pakistan. So we have, flowing from this, Pakistan has purchased 4 Milgem class corvettes from Turkey. A number of other joint projects have taken place. Turkey has bought 52 Mushak primary aircraft trainers from Pakistan, but the sky is the limit in this regard. There is so much more we can do. There is, of course, a healthy exchange of information. We are looking at joint projects for the next generation of technologies. I do not have the full details, but I think this is an area where a lot is taking place and a lot can take place to the mutual benefit of both our countries.
Thank you, sir. Our final question comes from the net. And it's really, interesting and important for me. It asks about the economic interaction of Pakistan and Turkey, because the question, just portrays to what extent Turkish-Pakistani economic exchange, is evolving. That's really important because it diffuses to the other fields to build a common understanding or building a common approach to the problems, and also people-to-people interaction. So what about the economic interaction?
Yes, there are 2 dimensions to this question. One is the straightforward purchase and sale of goods, exports and imports. On that, unfortunately, Pakistan and Turkey need to do much more than what they are doing. Our level of trade is not commensurate with the robust political relationship that we have, the excellent understanding that exists between the two countries, the two peoples, and the two governments, as well as the possibilities that exist between us. So our trade is was last year about 800 billion, 300 million Pakistani exports and the rest Turkish exports. We need to do more and we need to even this out. A second aspect is investment. There has been healthy Turkish investment into Pakistan in the last 5 years. As Arçelik has invested about $250 million. Coca-Cola HHK has also invested about $500 million. Hayat Kimia has established a plant in Pakistan. And there are Zorlu is producing energy in Pakistan. So there are a number of, according to my information, big and small, about 150 Turkish companies have a presence in Pakistan. Dolsar Engineering is a consultant on some of the biggest hydroelectric and other infrastructural projects that we are undertaking. And these are only the most immediate examples that come to mind. What we need to do is to build on this. There should be investment from Pakistan to Turkey also. At the same time, we need to find novel ways to promote this bilateral trade so that other than relying on the traditional items such as textiles, we can export things to Turkey that are usually not on Pakistan's export list, export offerings. Our two ministries of commerce are working on this, and hopefully something good will come out of it. It's a long-term process. We need to become more competitive on Pakistan side. And on the Turkish side, the Turkish industry, particularly the textile industry, needs to look at Pakistan less as a competitor and more as a complementary partner. We give you things, you work on it, and we can both sell it together somewhere else. So, yes, you have pointed out a very important aspect that the economic relationship needs more work.
Thank you so much, sir. I think there are no further questions from the class and also from YouTube. I would like to thank you for your participation. We have benefited a lot from your experience and from your words. I believe that Turkish-Pakistani relations are something special in terms of context, history, current interaction, and distinguished. I believe that we will see it in future as such. So I hope that our friendship and brothership will improve in future as was used to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I really benefited from your questions also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.